Today, another candidate forum, this time for the Ward 4 in St. Cloud City Council. George Rindelaub and Mike Conway here. We talked to them in the first half hour and are going to continue our conversation here in the second half hour. George, we'll start with you. A lot of talk over the last couple of weeks about this, I don't know if it was a story, a report. St. Cloud's the worst place to live in the state of Minnesota. It's gotten a lot of attention, a lot of people talking on the street. What are your thoughts about that? Do you agree?
Well, it was a disturbing report, but I think there were a lot of holes in the data. The best example that I can give is the crime statistics. It was based on, 68,000 people, whatever number that they used. In reality, in any given day, there's anywhere from 160 to 175,000 people in town. And I know that the city law enforcement is really geared up for a much higher population than what is listed at 65 or 68,000. But I mean, if you just run the numbers on that and you look at the crime statistics for 165 or 175,000 people, it's a run-of-the-mill type of measurement. But if you just take 65 or 68,000 people, it looks horrible. You can look at other websites. What was it? Even this website, a year earlier, we were one of the top cities in the country for seniors. If you wanted to be a senior citizen and live in St. Cloud, great medical situation, parks, recreation, entertainment, and so on. So I don't know. I didn't give it a lot of credence, to be honest with you. And I guess my memories when I moved here 30 years ago. I mean, if they're measuring St. Cloud as being this horrible place today, they should have been back here 30 years ago. I mean, I was on the downtown council for a couple of years when I first started as a Stearns County administrator. And we had a ring road to nowhere. You could shoot a cannon down St. Germain and not hit anything. You didn't even have turn lanes on Division Street. If you want to get from one end of town to the other end of town, it would take you forever because you had to sneak into the right lane. Otherwise, you couldn't even get through town. My favorite story is back in the early 90s. You probably remember the Mighty Ducks, and we had the Mighty Ducks at the Stearns County Courthouse. And I worked pretty closely with the location manager. And they not only wanted to film some of the courtroom scenes, they wanted to do some outdoor scenes. So we went over to the city park department. We chatted with Larry Hawes, and we said, they'd like to do some outdoor scenes over at Lake George. And he just laughed at us. The water was so polluted, they couldn't hardly even make ice over there. They said, you put any kind of a vehicle on that ice, it's going to go right through. Right. And, things have changed dramatically. And, people complain about, downtown doesn't have this or they've lost that or whatever the case might be. I just wish people could have been here 30 years ago and taken a look at downtown. It was really in bad shape. I think it's much better now.
Mike Conway, talk a little bit about that report, that story. Yeah. Does it concern you? Do you agree with it? Or?
Well, I mean, you can make statistics say just about anything you want. I do think it brings up a concern. And to kind of go along, George is right. 30 years ago, downtown was not busy, but there are still some concerns. I know personally, I don't really like to go downtown after, say, 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. That's just not a place that I want to go. But we do have some crime issues, and they're not necessarily crime issues that people want to do a lot of talking about. Care 11 just did a study, talked about trafficking in Minnesota as a whole. And I know we can do better with what we're doing with that. We need to put a little more emphasis on being aware and also working with the counties and developing more of a task force on trafficking. St. Cloud is sort of notoriously known as an epicenter, not necessarily happening as much here, but you'll hear stories where some of the local motels are getting busted for, not the motels themselves, but all of a sudden activities going on there we don't really want. But the geographic location of St. Cloud makes it a gateway to other parts of the state. So I think while I don't necessarily agree that St. Cloud is the worst place to live. I moved here by choice because it reminded me of my hometown as a kid growing up, the southern suburbs, Apple Valley, Rosemont area. St. Cloud very much reminded me of that when I moved up here with my kids in the 90s. But I think for us to not take those reports with some serious looking at and how can we provide the resources the police and the sheriff's departments need, and coordinate some of those efforts. So I think it's something we need to pay attention to. I disagree that they're the worst. We're the worst, but I do think it brings some attention to some of the areas that we need to focus on.
You both have referenced downtown, so let's talk about that. I've done a number of stories about work that's being done to try to revitalize our downtown. Doug Bozer and his Adventure Properties team doing a lot down there. Does the city play a role in this? And if so, what can the city do to bring some new life for adults to go downtown?
Well, first of all, Mike is right. I think the number one thing about downtown, and again, whether it's real or perceived, I think safety is always an issue. And I don't think St. Cloud's unique in that area. I think any kind of an urban downtown area is always going to have at least concerns about safety. When I served on the downtown council, we worked very closely with the city, and the city can do a lot to encourage businesses to come downtown. And a lot of it has to do, like I said, with safety, cleanliness, presentation of the city, promoting events downtown, the Fifth Avenue event that we have, the Christmas events that we have, different types of seasonal events I think are all pretty good. I guess I do disagree with Mike a little bit. I love going downtown. Mm-hmm. And I think working downtown for the last, 28 years, really, you get a little bit of a different feel if you've actually worked downtown and, gone to the businesses and gotten to know the people downtown. But again, maybe my experience is a little bit unique that way because not everybody does work downtown. But it's a constant battle. I know when we were the downtown council, we'd add 2 businesses, we'd lose a business. Mm-hmm. We'd lose another business, and then we'd add 2 more. And then there'd be a major development. And again, parking is always an issue. But again, the city and the county collaborated on that parking ramp down the Herberger's parking ramp by Capital One. There are things that the city can do to really encourage new businesses to go downtown, improve safety, and frankly, just work on improving the look of the downtown.
Yeah. Talk about downtown and your plan to maybe bring, obviously, Herberger's buildings.
Well, yeah, the Herberger's building is going to be a big question mark as far as what we can do. I think the city can lay some directions and can really enhance that. I know what's going on with Fifth Avenue last summer with the redevelopment there, and some of the things that Ray Harrington and his group is doing downtown are to be commended. But while St. Cloud is, there's a couple of factors at play. One, we have to understand that St. Cloud is a college town. If we don't embrace the university and make that a viable part of what happens downtown, then we're missing something that could be a viable option. With that said, we've got issues with the Herberger building. How that's going to happen, the city needs to be proactive in helping that be developed. We also have the condos that were built downtown that right now are sitting empty. As much as I'd love to see those filled, there's maybe some things the city can do to help with parking and things like that. But when we're talking about bringing businesses downtown, we have to find incentives to allow them to operate successfully. But also, we're competing with out by Crossroads. We're competing with other areas that, frankly, while I understand George worked downtown, and I think that's a great, vibrant activity downtown. But Friday night at 9:00, I'm not going downtown to go spend my dollars. I'm going to go someplace where I feel safe. And I think that's nothing against the college kids. I think there's an element or two that really needs to be dealt with downtown and that we can focus our efforts on. But we got a couple of big issues, and I think the city can help. But we also have to figure out how is that Herberger's area going to be developed and really provide some guidance. I see that as a multiplex type thing where we can generate and get several businesses together.
How do you guys feel about the plans that are moving forward to revitalize the current tech sites, that project? Talk a little bit about that, George. Are you in favor of what's happening with that as that's moving forward, or...
Now,
what do you the current tech site? Obviously, the city owns that building for $1, mm-hmm. And they plan to bring in a multi-use major complex over there. That's mm-hmm. the plan moving forward. We haven't any mm-hmm. developers yet, but are you mm-hmm. On board with what the plan is, or would you do something differently? Or
well, I think we're going to have to let the plan play itself out here, And again, it's just a plan. And I think the more public input that you get on that plan, the more you work with the people in the neighborhoods, and you start looking at talking to developers and find out how viable that plan is going to really move that in one direction or another.
Yeah, and I'm going to have to disagree with George on this one. They're not listening. The developers, the last planning committee put forth their vision drawing, and it has an 8-story high-rise facing Lake George. Now, if people want to know what example of how tall an 8-story, the Falcon National Bank, the building downtown, that's about an 8-story building. So put that building on the western side of Lake George that's going to tower over the lake. They want to put 400, and the plan is 400 and some odd multi-use apartment buildings in a neighborhood that really is not sustainable. I have very strong opinions about the vision, and you're right, it's a plan, but it's a vision that they're putting out to developers, and I think it's a very false vision because that would decimate that area and make it totally unlivable for the people that are already there. We have 100-year-old houses in that neighborhood, and to put that type of high-density housing in 8-story buildings with 4 stories on either side, you're going to have 400 to 500 parking spots you're going to need. That's way too much development in that one particular area. So personally, the vision plan that they've put out is not fair to the people that are prospective to do this. And I think it's important to note the people that came up with that vision plan are from Chicago. They're looking at neighborhood as if it would happen in a neighborhood in Chicago. We're not Chicago. We don't need that density of development in that tech area.
All right. We're almost out of time, so just
closing. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with anything Mike has to say about that either.
Okay. All right. Almost out of time. Closing statements. George, why should people on Tuesday or before Tuesday, if they vote early, why should they vote for you to be on the St. Cloud City Council?
Well, first of all, my attitude is that St. Cloud is a great city. Like other regional centers, we have our challenges. We've got challenges with traffic congestion, neighborhood safety, funding for our infrastructure. But I think with my background, I have the insight, knowledge, and experience to find new solutions to these challenges. I've had great success dealing with these same issues at the county level. Oftentimes, it involves thinking outside the box, and I think that's very important. A lot of times, people at the city council or county board or whatever it is in local government, you got to be a little creative, and you got to think outside the box. Well, let's think of a different way to do things. And always it involves collaboration with other entities, whether it's the public sector, other neighboring jurisdictions, whether that deals with crime or infrastructure, whatever the case might be. And collaboration, I'm good at that. Proved that in my 28 years working with the county, and I'm also a good listener. I ask for your vote on the November 6th election.
All right. And then Mike Conway, why should folks vote for you on Tuesday?
Well, first of all, I will tell you this. I've never been in the public employee. I've never worked for the county, never worked for the city, and I thought that was a bad thing until my friends pointed out, Mike, you have no bad habits to unlearn. I thought that was interesting. And no offense to George, but I think we need some new direction, and we need a city council overall that's going to listen to what the people are asking for and be a strong proponent of what people are looking for in their leadership in the city. I use the KISS principle. Keep it surprisingly simple. Being on the city council should not be complicated. We need to make sure our roads are paved, our police get what they need, our fire gets what they need, and that the citizens are listened to. And once we do those things, I think the city basically can run itself. And that hasn't been happening in the last couple of years. So I encourage people to vote for me coming up on Tuesday, and realize that on Tuesday we can make a major change direction or change course for the city in one night. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you for coming in. Those are the candidates running for St. Cloud City Council in Ward 4, Mike Conway and George Rindelaub. Thank you guys for coming in and being part of the show.
Thanks for inviting us.